Robert had known Lisa for about 3 years. They worked at the same company. In the marketing department, they would say hello in the hallways, sometimes grab coffee during breaks, and occasionally chat about work projects. That was it. Nothing special, nothing deep. Just two people who happened to work in the same building and were friendly enough to acknowledge each other's existence. So when his phone buzzed on a Thursday evening and he saw her name pop up with a message, he was surprised. It was raining outside, one of those heavy autumn rains that makes you want to stay home under a blanket. Her message was short and direct. She asked if he could come to her place. She said it was important. She said, "Please, come tonight." Robert stared at his phone for a full minute. This was unusual. They had never hung out outside of work. They had never exchanged personal messages before. Something about the tone of her text made him feel like this wasn't a casual invitation. There was weight to those words. He texted back asking if everything was okay. She replied with just one word. "Please." He grabbed his jacket and keys. The drive to her apartment took about 20 minutes. His mind was racing the entire time. What could be so urgent? Was she in some kind of trouble? Did something happen at work? Maybe she needed help with something. He couldn't figure it out. The rain kept pouring, and his windshield wipers worked overtime to keep the view clear. When he arrived at her building, he sat in his car for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The building was old, but well-maintained, with brick walls and small balconies. He walked up to the 3rd floor and found her door. Before he could even knock, the door opened. She had been waiting for him. Lisa looked different. Her eyes were red, like she had been crying. But there was also something else in her expression. She looked determined, like she had made an important decision and was ready to follow through with it. She looked at him for what felt like forever, just studying his face. Then she spoke those words that would stay with him for the rest of his life. Tonight isn't just another night. He didn't know what to say. He just nodded and followed her inside. The apartment was warm and cozy, but he immediately noticed something was different. The living room looked like someone had been going through old memories. Papers were scattered all over the coffee table. There was a bottle of wine sitting there, already half empty. And in the center of everything was an old shoebox, the kind people use to store precious things from the past. Lisa gestured for him to sit down on the couch. She sat across from him in an armchair, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold, even though the room was warm. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rain beating against the windows. Robert waited patiently. He knew she would speak when she was ready. Finally, she started talking. Her voice was soft and shaky at first. She told him that her mother had passed away 2 weeks ago. Robert felt a pang in his chest. He hadn't known. He started to offer his condolences, but she gently raised her hand to stop him. She said there was more. Much more. After her mother died, Lisa had the difficult task of going through all her belongings. Old clothes, books, jewelry, photo albums. All the things that make up a person's life. And then she found this box. This shoebox that had been hidden away in the back of her mother's closet, behind winter coats and storage bags. At first, she thought it was just more old photos, maybe letters from old friends. Nothing unusual. But when she opened it and started looking through the contents, her entire world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about her family, about her mother, about her own life story, suddenly became a question mark. She picked up the box and held it in her lap. Robert could see her hands trembling slightly. She looked at him with those red, tired eyes and said something that made his heart ache for her. She said he was the only person she felt she could trust with this. The only person who wouldn't judge her or her mother. The only person who would just listen and be there. Robert leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and gave her his full attention. Whatever was in that box, whatever secret it held, he was ready to hear it. Because sometimes, people just need someone to witness their pain, to share the burden of truth, and to remind them they're not alone. Lisa took a deep breath and opened the shoebox. The first thing she pulled out was a stack of old photographs. They were from the 90s. Judging by the fashion and the quality of the prints, the colors had that faded look that old photos get over time. Robert watched as she spread them out on the coffee table, her hands moving carefully, like each photo was made of glass. The pictures showed a young woman, barely more than a teenager. It took Robert a moment to recognize her. It was Lisa's mother, but much younger than he had ever seen her in family photos at Lisa's desk at work. She looked so different, so young and hopeful. In some pictures, she was holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Lisa's voice cracked as she explained. Her mother had been just 19 years old in these photos. A teenager herself, really. And that baby in the pictures was not Lisa. Lisa wasn't born until 7 years later. This was another child, a daughter that Lisa never knew existed. The room felt heavy with this revelation. Robert didn't interrupt. He just listened as Lisa continued to piece together the story. Her mother had gotten pregnant very young. Before she met Lisa's father, the family circumstances were difficult back then. Her mother's parents were strict and traditional. There was pressure, shame, and very few options for a 19-year-old girl with no support and no resources. Lisa pulled out more items from the box. There were official-looking papers. A birth certificate with the name Olivia written on it. Adoption papers signed and dated from decades ago. Her mother had made the heartbreaking decision to give her baby up for adoption, hoping the child would have a better life than she could provide at that age. Robert watched as tears rolled down Lisa's cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, trying to maintain her composure. This was hard enough without completely breaking down. She told him that for years, she thought she was an only child. She had grown up that way. No siblings, just her and her parents. Family gatherings were small. Holidays were quiet. And now, suddenly, she learns that somewhere out there, she has a sister, a whole person who shares her blood, her history, her mother. But there was more in the box. Lisa pulled out a bundle of letters tied together with a faded ribbon. These were recent letters, written in the last 5 years. Robert could see dates on the envelopes. The handwriting was neat and careful. These were letters between Lisa's mother and Olivia. Lisa explained that 5 years ago, Olivia had found her birth mother. It happens sometimes. Adoptees search for their biological parents, looking for answers, looking for connection, looking for that missing piece of their identity. And she had found Lisa's mother. They had been in contact for 5 years. 5 whole years of letters, phone calls, and occasional visits. Robert felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for what Lisa's mother must have gone through giving up her child. Joy that they had reconnected. But also confusion. Why had Lisa's mother kept this secret from her own daughter? Why hadn't she shared this with Lisa? Lisa was clearly struggling with the same questions. Her voice rose slightly as she talked about feeling betrayed. How could her mother keep something this huge from her? They had been close. They talked about everything. Or at least, Lisa thought they did. Now she was questioning every conversation, every moment, wondering what else had been hidden. She read parts of the letters out loud. In them, her mother wrote about wanting to tell Lisa. She wrote about the guilt she felt keeping this secret. She mentioned Lisa's father and how complicated it would be to explain everything. There was fear in those words. Fear of judgment. Fear of disrupting the family. Fear of losing Lisa's love and respect. The letters also revealed that Olivia understood. She didn't push. She was grateful just to know her birth mother. To have some connection. Even if it had to be private, she had her own life, her own family who raised her. She wasn't trying to replace anyone or cause problems. She just wanted to know where she came from. Lisa's mother had planned to tell everyone. The letters mentioned it several times. Next month, she would say. Or after the holidays. Or once Lisa's father retired. There was always a reason to wait. And then cancer came. It moved fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. And in all that time, with all those hospital visits and difficult conversations, she never found the courage to reveal this truth. Robert finally spoke. He asked Lisa how she found out about Olivia's contact information. Lisa showed him a small address book that had been in the box. There was a page with Olivia's name, phone number, and address. The address was only 2 hours away, not in another state or across the country, just 2 hours down the highway. Lisa had been sitting with this information for days. She hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't done anything except stare at that address and spiral through every possible emotion. Anger at her mother, curiosity about Olivia, fear of reaching out, guilt for feeling angry, grief for everything lost. It was too much for one person to carry alone. That's why she had called Robert. She needed someone neutral, someone who didn't know her mother, someone who wouldn't have complicated feelings about family loyalty or past decisions. She needed a friend who could just be present and help her figure out what to do next. They sat there until 2 in the morning, talking through everything. Robert asked questions. He listened to her cry. He let her be angry without trying to fix it. And slowly, as the night wore on and the rain finally stopped, Lisa came to a decision. She was going to reach out to Olivia. She had to. Because not knowing was worse than any awkward conversation could ever be. 2 days passed before Lisa felt ready to make the call. Robert checked on her through text messages, making sure she was okay, not pushing her to move faster than she was ready for. On Saturday morning, she finally dialed the number from her mother's address book. Her hands shook as she pressed each digit. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. A woman's voice said hello. It was warm and friendly, unsuspecting of what was about to happen. Lisa's voice came out smaller than she intended. She said her name, and then added that she was calling about her mother. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Olivia's voice changed completely. It became soft and careful, like she was talking to something fragile that might break. She said she had been hoping Lisa would call. She said she was so sorry for Lisa's loss. She said their mother had talked about Lisa all the time in her letters, with so much love and pride. They talked for an hour that first call. It was awkward and emotional, and sometimes there were long silences where neither knew what to say. But they pushed through it. By the end of the conversation, they had agreed to meet in person. Olivia suggested her place since she lived closer. Lisa agreed, but then immediately panicked after hanging up. She called Robert and asked if he would drive with her. She couldn't do this alone. She needed someone there, not to talk or interfere, just to be there. Robert agreed without hesitation. He told her he would pick her up the next morning. Sunday arrived with clear skies and cool autumn air. Robert pulled up to Lisa's building at 9 in the morning. She came down wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nervous but determined. They got in the car and started the drive. The first 30 minutes were quiet. Lisa stared out the window at the passing trees and small towns. Then she started talking, almost to herself more than to Robert. She wondered what Olivia looked like. Did they look alike? Did they have the same laugh? The same habits? She wondered about Olivia's life. Was she married? Did she have kids? What did she do for work? Robert let her talk through all of it. He offered simple responses, gentle encouragement, and didn't try to predict what would happen. He told her that whatever happened, it would be okay. That she was brave for doing this. That her mother would be proud of her for reaching out. As they got closer to the address, Lisa's anxiety increased. She kept checking her phone, rereading the directions, making sure they were going to the right place. When they finally turned onto Olivia's street, Lisa asked Robert to pull over for a minute. She needed a moment to breathe. They sat on a quiet suburban street lined with trees that were losing their leaves. The houses were modest and well kept, with small front yards and attached garages. Kids' bikes and toys were scattered on some lawns. It was peaceful and ordinary, and somewhere in one of these houses was a person who shared Lisa's blood and history. Robert asked her if she wanted more time. Lisa shook her head. She said if she waited any longer, she might lose her courage completely. They drove slowly down the block until they found the right house. It was a small townhouse with dark blue siding and white trim. There were flowers planted in pots by the front door, even though it was late in the season. Lisa sat in the car, staring at that front door. Her hands gripped her knees. Her breathing was shallow. Robert waited patiently. He didn't rush her. After about 10 minutes, Lisa turned to him with tears in her eyes. She asked if he would walk to the door with her. Not go inside. Just walk to the door. She needed that support. Robert nodded, and they both got out of the car. The walk from the curb to the front door felt like miles. Each step was heavy. Lisa's heart was pounding so hard, she could feel it in her throat. When they reached the door, she raised her hand to knock but froze. Robert stood beside her, a steady presence. Finally, she knocked. 3 soft taps. They heard movement inside, footsteps approaching, the sound of a lock turning, and then the door opened. The woman standing there was in her early 30s. She had dark hair like Lisa, though hers was shorter. She had the same green eyes that Lisa had, the same slight build, the same way of tilting her head slightly when looking at someone. It was like looking at a reflection that was slightly different but undeniably familiar. Olivia's eyes filled with tears immediately. She looked at Lisa with an expression of wonder and recognition and sadness all mixed together. For a moment, neither of them moved. They just stared at each other, taking in the reality of finally meeting the sister they never knew they had. Then Olivia stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Lisa. The hug was tight and desperate, like she was afraid Lisa might disappear if she let go. Lisa hugged her back just as hard, and both of them started crying right there on the doorstep. Robert stepped back, giving them space, his own eyes getting misty watching this reunion. After what felt like several minutes, Olivia pulled back and noticed Robert standing there. She wiped her eyes and smiled at him through her tears. She asked if he was Lisa's husband. Lisa quickly explained that Robert was her friend, someone who had helped her through all of this. Olivia immediately insisted that he come inside. She said anyone Lisa trusted enough to bring along was welcome in her home. They walked into a cozy living room filled with warm colors and comfortable furniture. There were photos on the walls and shelves. Olivia apologized for the mess, though the place looked perfectly clean. She said she had been too nervous to sit still all morning and had cleaned everything 3 times already. She had made cookies. The smell filled the house. She said she needed something to do with her hands while waiting, so she baked. Robert and Lisa sat on the couch while Olivia brought out coffee and a plate of chocolate chip cookies that were still warm. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. Then they began to talk. Really talk. Olivia wanted to know everything about Lisa. What was her childhood like? What were her interests? What did she do for work? Lisa answered each question, and then asked her own. They discovered small similarities. Both loved reading mystery novels. Both hated coffee but drank it anyway. Both had a habit of organizing things by color. Olivia talked about her adoptive parents with love and gratitude. They had given her a good life, she said. They were wonderful people who had passed away a few years ago. She had always known she was adopted. Her parents never hid it from her. And when she turned 25, she started looking for her birth mother, just to know, just to understand where she came from. Finding their mother 5 years ago had been incredible, Olivia said. But it had also been complicated because of the secrecy. She understood why their mother couldn't tell everyone. She didn't want to cause problems. But it had been hard, being this secret part of someone's life. She had always hoped that one day, she and Lisa could meet. The afternoon sun streamed through Olivia's living room windows as the conversation continued. What started as nervous small talk had gradually transformed into something deeper. The 2 sisters were finding their rhythm, discovering the cadence of each other's voices and the patterns of each other's thoughts. Olivia got up and brought out a large photo album. She had prepared for this meeting carefully, wanting to share her life with Lisa in a tangible way. The album contained pictures from her childhood. There she was as a baby with her adoptive parents, beaming with joy. Elementary school photos with missing teeth and awkward haircuts. High school graduation. College years. Her wedding day. Lisa took in each photo with intense focus. This was the life her sister had lived, while Lisa was growing up in a completely different place. Completely unaware of her existence. Two parallel lives that should have intersected but didn't. Until now. Then Olivia brought out something else. A smaller album that she had clearly put together recently. This one contained photos of their mother, not the mother Lisa knew, but the version that Olivia had gotten to know over the past 5 years. There were pictures of them together at coffee shops, at parks, sitting on this very couch. Lisa's breath caught. Seeing her mother smiling next to Olivia, seeing them together, made everything feel more real. Her mother had lived this secret life. These weren't just letters and phone calls. They had actually met, spent time together, built a relationship that Lisa knew nothing about. Robert watched from his seat as Lisa processed this visual evidence. He could see the mix of emotions crossing her face. There was sadness there, definitely. But also, something else, maybe the beginning of understanding, maybe the start of forgiveness. Olivia showed Lisa letters their mother had written. She had kept every single one. In these letters, their mother often wrote about Lisa, about how proud she was, about funny things Lisa had said or done, about worrying if she was eating enough or working too hard. It was clear from these words that their mother had loved Lisa deeply, even while keeping this enormous secret. One letter in particular made Lisa cry. In it, their mother wrote about wanting to tell Lisa the truth before it was too late. She wrote about being scared, about not knowing the right words, about fearing that Lisa would hate her for giving up her first child, about worrying that Lisa would feel like she wasn't enough, that she couldn't fill the hole left by the daughter who was given away. Lisa looked up at Olivia with red eyes and said something that surprised everyone, including herself. She said she understood. She said it was wrong, and it hurt. But she understood why her mother had been afraid. Fear makes people do strange things. Fear makes secrets grow bigger and bigger until they feel impossible to share. Olivia reached across and squeezed Lisa's hand. She said their mother had carried so much guilt about all of it. Guilt about giving Olivia up. Guilt about keeping secrets. Guilt about not being brave enough to fix it before she died. Olivia said she had tried to tell their mother that she didn't need to feel guilty, that she had made the best choice she could as a scared 19-year-old. But guilt doesn't listen to logic. They talked about their mother's final months. Lisa described the hospital visits, the treatments that didn't work, the way cancer steals a person piece by piece. Olivia shared that she had wanted to visit during that time, wanted to say goodbye properly, but their mother had been too worried about the secret coming out in such a difficult moment. So Olivia had stayed away, respecting that wish, even though it broke her heart. Robert excused himself at one point to use the bathroom, giving the sisters more privacy. When he came back, he found them looking through old letters together, reading passages out loud, sometimes laughing at funny memories their mother had shared, sometimes crying at the painful parts. As evening approached, Olivia offered to make dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. But she wanted them to stay longer. Lisa looked at Robert, silently asking if that was okay. He smiled and nodded. They had nowhere else to be. This was more important than anything else. In the kitchen, Olivia and Lisa worked side by side, chopping vegetables and stirring sauce. Robert heard them talking, and occasionally laughing. There was something healing happening in those simple domestic actions. Something normal and sisterly emerging from such an abnormal situation. Over dinner, they talked about lighter things. Favorite movies. Terrible first jobs. Embarrassing childhood stories. Robert contributed to the conversation when asked. But mostly he observed two women building a bridge across decades of separation. They were finding common ground, discovering that despite growing up in different families, they shared certain qualities that must have come from their mother. Or maybe even deeper, from genetics that neither could control. After dinner, as they cleared the table, Olivia became quiet for a moment. Then, she asked Lisa a question that had clearly been on her mind. She asked if Lisa was angry with her, if Lisa blamed her for any of this, if Lisa resented her existence. Lisa put down the dishes she was holding and looked directly at Olivia. She said no. How could she be angry at someone who had no choice in any of this? Olivia didn't ask to be born. didn't ask to be given up, didn't ask for their mother to keep her a secret. If anything, Lisa said, Olivia had been robbed too. Robbed of a relationship with her sister for all these years. The honesty in that moment was powerful. Robert saw both women tearing up again, but these were different tears. Not tears of grief or confusion, but tears of relief and acceptance. They hugged again, longer this time. And when they pulled apart, something had shifted. The awkwardness was mostly gone. The uncertainty had transformed into possibility. They moved back to the living room and continued talking until late into the evening. Olivia shared more stories about her life. She worked as a teacher at an elementary school. She had been married for 4 years to a kind man who taught at the same school. They were trying to start a family. Lisa talked about her work in marketing, about her tiny apartment, about her cat, who was probably wondering where she was by now. Robert glanced at his watch around 10 p.m. and gently mentioned that it was getting late. Lisa looked surprised at how much time had passed. The day had disappeared. Olivia walked them to the door, clearly reluctant to see them go. Before they left, the sisters exchanged phone numbers. They made plans to meet again the following weekend. And the weekend after that, they talked about introducing Olivia to other family members, though they both agreed to take that slowly. At the door, Olivia hugged Lisa one more time. She thanked Robert for bringing Lisa to her and for being such a steady presence. Robert told her she didn't need to thank him. Some things you do just because they're right. The drive home was quiet but not uncomfortable. Lisa stared out the window again, but this time there was a small smile on her face. Robert asked how she was feeling. She thought for a moment before answering. She said she felt lighter somehow, like she had been carrying something heavy without realizing it, and now it was a little bit easier to breathe. She also said something else. She said that, tonight, that first night when she opened the door and said those words about it not being just another night, she had been right. That Thursday evening had changed everything. It had set in motion a series of events that led to this moment. To finding a sister, to understanding her mother better, to healing something that had been broken before she even knew it existed. The weeks following that first meeting were busy ones. Lisa and Olivia talked on the phone almost every day. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes just for a few minutes to check in. They texted constantly, sharing random thoughts and photos, and silly memes the way sisters do. They were making up for lost time, trying to cram decades of sisterhood into every available moment. Robert watched this transformation in Lisa with quiet satisfaction. She seemed happier, more complete somehow. The anger and confusion she had felt initially had mostly faded, replaced by gratitude for what she had found. Yes, she wished her mother had told her sooner. Yes, there were still moments of sadness and loss. But dwelling on what could have been wouldn't change anything. Moving forward was the only option that made sense. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Lisa asked Robert to join her and Olivia for lunch. They met at a small cafe downtown. When Robert arrived, he found the two sisters already there, sitting close together and laughing about something on Olivia's phone. The transformation was remarkable. They looked like people who had known each other their whole lives. Over sandwiches and soup, Olivia mentioned that her husband wanted to meet Lisa. She had told him everything about finding her birth mother years ago, so none of this was a surprise to him. He was excited that Olivia now had a sister, and wanted to welcome Lisa into their family properly. Lisa agreed enthusiastically. They also talked about the difficult topic of telling other family members. Lisa's father, their mother's husband, still didn't know about Olivia. Lisa had been trying to find the right way to tell him. She worried about how he would react. Would he be angry at his late wife for keeping such a huge secret? Would he feel betrayed? Would he even believe it? Olivia understood the delicacy of the situation. She told Lisa to take whatever time she needed. She had waited 32 years to have a sister. She could wait a little longer for the rest of the family to know about her existence. That evening, Lisa decided it was time to tell her father. She called him and asked if she could come over. Something in her voice must have alerted him that this was serious, because he immediately said yes. Robert offered to go with her for support, but Lisa said this was something she needed to do alone. The conversation with her father was difficult. Lisa had prepared what she wanted to say, had practiced it in her mind dozens of times. But when she sat down across from him in his living room, surrounded by photos of their small family, the words came out messier than she planned. She showed him the shoebox, the photos, the letters, the adoption papers, the birth certificate. Her father was silent for a long time after she finished explaining. Lisa couldn't read his expression. Was he angry? Hurt? In shock? Finally, he spoke. He said he had suspected something years ago, not specifically that his wife had another child, but that she was carrying some burden from her past. She would sometimes get sad for no apparent reason. She would receive phone calls that she would take in another room. She had been protective of certain things in her closet. He said he had asked her about it once or twice, but she always said it was nothing, just old memories and regrets. He had respected her privacy and hadn't pushed. Now he knew why. He wasn't angry, he told Lisa. He was sad. Sad that his wife had felt she couldn't trust him with this truth. Sad that she had died still carrying that secret. But he understood that shame and fear are powerful forces. Then he asked about Olivia. What was she like? Lisa pulled out her phone and showed him photos. She talked about meeting her, about how kind she was, about all the things they had in common. Her father listened carefully to every word. When Lisa finished, he said he would like to meet Olivia sometime. Not right away, but eventually. He needed time to process all of this, but he wanted to meet the daughter his wife had brought into the world. Lisa cried with relief. She had been so worried about his reaction, and while it wasn't perfect, it was much better than she had feared. They hugged for a long time. Her father told her how proud he was of how she had handled all of this, how mature and compassionate she had been. Her mother would have been proud too. 2 months after that first meeting at Olivia's house, they decided to do something special. It would have been their mother's birthday. Rather than spending it alone in grief, they chose to spend it together, celebrating the woman who had connected them. Lisa called Robert and asked if he would join them. She wanted him there because he had been part of this story from the beginning. From that rainy Thursday night when she opened the door with tears in her eyes and told him that tonight wasn't just another night. He had been the steady presence through all of it, and she wanted him to be there for this too. They gathered at Olivia's house again. This time, Olivia's husband was there too. Lisa's father came as well, meeting Olivia for the first time. It was emotional, but beautiful. The two families that had lived separately for so long were finally coming together. They lit candles in their mother's memory. They looked through all the photos from both sides of her life. They shared stories. Lisa's father talked about meeting his wife and falling in love. Lisa shared memories of growing up with her. Olivia contributed stories from the letters and their visits over the past 5 years. Together, they created a more complete picture of who this woman had been. There was laughter mixed with the tears. Someone made a joke about how their mother had never been good at keeping secrets in general, which made it even more remarkable that she had kept this particular secret for so long. They agreed that she had been complicated, like all people are. She had made mistakes, but she had also done her best in impossible situations. As the evening wound down, Robert found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. That Thursday night when Lisa called him, he had no idea it would lead to all of this. He thought maybe she needed help with something simple. He never imagined he would witness the discovery of a secret sister, the building of a new relationship, and the healing of old wounds. Lisa found him standing alone in Olivia's kitchen, looking thoughtful. She asked what he was thinking about. He smiled and told her he was just amazed at how much life could change in such a short time. How one night, one decision to trust someone, one choice to open up about pain, could lead to something beautiful. Lisa nodded in agreement. She told him that she had been thinking about that night a lot lately. When she opened the door and saw him standing there in the rain, when she said those words about tonight not being just another night, she had meant it more than she even realized at the time. That night had been a turning point, the beginning of a journey that led her to Olivia, to understanding her mother better, and to becoming part of a bigger family than she knew she had. She thanked Robert again for everything. For showing up that night without questions. For driving her to meet Olivia. For being present at important moments without trying to take over or fix things. For just being a friend when she needed one most. Robert told her that's what friends do. They show up. They listen. They stay. As Robert drove home that night, he thought about how sometimes the most important moments in life don't announce themselves with fanfare. They come quietly, on random Thursday evenings, through unexpected phone calls, from people we think we know, but realize we're only beginning to understand. And if we're lucky, we have the wisdom to recognize those moments for what they are, and the courage to see them through. Lisa would often tell this story in the years that followed. How she discovered she had a sister. How she found the courage to reach out. How a friend helped her through the hardest time of her life. And whenever anyone asked her how she knew that night was important, how she knew things were about to change, she would smile and say that some nights just feel different. They carry weight. They open doors. They're the nights that change everything. And she was right. That Thursday night, when she opened her door and looked at Robert and said those words, she set in motion a series of events that brought her more than she could have imagined. Not just a sister, but healing. Not just answers, but peace. Not just loss, but also discovery. And through it all, the reminder that we never face our hardest moments completely alone. As long as we're brave enough to let someone in,